Thank God. We were in Florida. It was a nice service. Had some sunshine.
How was
Good
it?
to see people. Very good. Very good.
Good turnout?
Big turnout?
Yeah, we get 650 people probably. It's nice, always a nice crowd. Big reunion. So I'm hoping today we can get to the end of this section. We now are quite familiar with this technique, the short-long path of relying on the hidden love, which, as your question implied, is not something that's rational and there all the time, but it's there ready to jump into action when we're in a situation where our connection to God is challenged. And we're kind of using that sort of override button. Right? A lot of machines function one way, but they may have an override button installed that will change a lot of the ways things function, take all the limits off. Sometimes animals will have those same kind of triggers. If you see an animal in the wild whose children are threatened, a mother may do things that it would normally not do, even people certainly. There's an override button where suddenly things are possible that seemed impossible before, and will do things that seemed totally irrational before. So this is the Jewish override button. We know there's a button if it comes to completely cutting off my connection to God. Clearly, now an override button hits, and this other hidden love wakes up, which has, throughout history, caused Jews to even give up their lives, even though it makes no sense. It flows from a place above consciousness, and it has a power that's the most powerful drive that we have. And so we don't necessarily have to have a situation where we have to give up our lives, God forbid, but we're connecting the dots and saying, anytime I do any sin, it's the same separation. So I don't have to feel the same, overwhelming emotion, but if I don't have to press the button, but if I put my finger on the button, I kind of look at my situation and I say, I would give up my life not to be separated from God, so really I'm not going to wait 10 minutes or not say this thing or not eat this thing or not do this thing. Really just have your finger on the button. It wakes something up and we get a little bit of that drive and it gets us through the next moment, right? Like a little shot of caffeine for your soul. Baruch atah Elohim kol am shekol mi'ad biburo. And then we looked at how to avoid doing negative commandments that we've decided we're not going to do as Reformed Jews. And now we're looking at the positive side. And of course, we have that very powerful image which we love. If the idea of giving up my life doesn't work, thinking that I'm taking, I'm going to a Phil Collins concert, I'm taking Phil's head and I'm sticking it, God forbid, in the outhouse in a bucket of filth, just for a minute, right? It's like, what do you mean? It was just 10 seconds that his face was in the outhouse, in the actual waste. What's the big deal? That's what we're doing. We're taking a spark of God, the highest point in the universe, and we're dragging it down below even the klipa with our free will, and we're just, for those 10 seconds, I'm saying, here you go. That's your experience, divine spark. So think about our responsibility to our soul as well, and that might also get us through the next moment that we might have made a worse decision. And now we're getting to positive commandments, because it's not just about not doing things that are inappropriate. It's also about having the energy, the enthusiasm to do things that we know are productive. So here, there's a flip side of our technique, and that is the same thing, that we know that a positive mitzvah binds me to God in a unique way, like a body and a soul. Learning Torah binds me to God totally. As the Zohar says, God and the Torah are completely one. And we also know that union is above time. It's eternal. So it doesn't matter that it took me 2 minutes to do the mitzvah. That mitzvah now, that union is eternal. It's above time. It affects all of time. Whereas, who said, it's timeless. Yes, timeless. This may be a better word. Thank you. So why would I, if I would give up my life to not be separated from God, why would I not give up 10 minutes or a little bit of sleep or some time in the cold or whatever to have this connection with God that is so complete and so timeless? Of course I would. So now we get into the positive side where we get the enthusiasm to approach our practice that way. We're 3:43 at 20th of Shvat, right in the middle. 3:43. וכיוצא ואלו ממלחמות היצר ותחבולותיו לקרר נפש האדם שלו להפקיד ממונו ובריאות גופו. Is there some... That's where we are, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And in similar way.
And in similar matters that entail great effort, where one must struggle with the evil inclination in its wiles, which seek to cool the ardor of a man's soul, claiming that he ought not dissipate his money in the case of charity, or his health in matters requiring physical exertion.
Oh, I said I'd put up the sukkah, but it's a little rainy outside, and I've got a bit of a sniffle, and really I should watch my health. Okay, it sounds good, right? I'm taking care of myself. Don't we all want to be good stewards of our health? But is that the inclination just keeping me from putting up a sukkah, right? And so by this, we don't want to. If you're truly sick, that's one thing. And if you got to take care of your health in a serious way, that's one thing. But just worrying about dissipating your energy or health, that's just the evil inclination in this case, keeping us from doing something key, right? Or also with money. Right? Oh, I really, this is the amount I really should give, but I might need this for something else, or my savings could use the money. So the evil inclination has all kinds of ways of presenting arguments that seem good. I mean, it's good to save money, right? This is a good thing to do. But know what's in the balance here. We're going for a timeless connection with the Ein Sof, right? And so really be careful about making these calculations. We want to have all the power to approach it with all of our energy. שלעמוד נגדו ולחבשו קרוב מאוד אל האדם, כשישים אל ליבו שלנצח היצר בכל זה ויותר מזה.
It is very easy for a person to resist and subjugate his nature when he considers deeply that to conquer his nature in all of the above and
ולעשות הפכו ממש, קל מאוד מיסורי מיתה השם ישמרנו.
And in fact, to do the very opposite, that is to exert himself strenuously, both bodily and financially, is much lighter suffering than death. May God preserve us.
And so we've all seen people that are so committed to something that they would sail across the ocean, they would give up everything, they would sell everything. There's a power that comes with that. And we want to channel that power in our day-to-day decisions. Right? I don't feel like going out in the cold to put up my sukkah. But you know what? I would give up my life to not be separated from God. And out there, I'm being united with God timelessly. So there you go. It's much easier for me to endure, put on a sweater and be out in the rain for a bit than to give up my life. Right? Same inner dialogue. ויסורי מיתה השם ישמרנו היה מקבל באהבה וברצון, שעלול להיפרד מייחודו ואחדותו יתברך אפילו לפי שעה השתחוות לעבודה זרה חס ושלום.
That he would lovingly and willingly have accepted the pain of death, God preserve us, so as not to be separated from God's unity and oneness, even for a moment by an act of idolatry, God forbid.
Right, so he said, if I give up my life to not be separated from God just by an act that lasts 30 seconds, how much more so should I give up $20 or 10 minutes of sleep or some other life issue for a connection that's timeless? Right? Of course I would do that. So again, this is an inner dialogue, not for the times when I'm tempted to mess up, but for the times when I know there's something I want to do, and yet I'm feeling lazy, I'm feeling sluggish, I got some argument in my head that's in the way, and we want to overcome that as well. וכל שכן שיש לו לקבל באהבה וברצון כדי לדווקא בו לעולם בעד.
Certainly then, he ought to accept lovingly and willingly the comparatively minor pain of exerting himself in the performance of the mitzvah in order to bind himself to God with an eternal bond.
Yeah, makes sense. There's a little sum up here in Steinsaltz's commentary on this. I'd love to share because he brings a little heart into what's sometimes a deep conversation. So I think this will kind of sum it up in a nice way as well. In previous chapters, the author discussed two aspects of the commandments. One, attachment to the divine by performing the commandments, and 2, severance from the divine as a result of violating prohibitions. Both aspects essentially express the same idea, that the commandments are not only details and that their observance is not a question of good deeds or bad deeds, rather they embody our entire relationship with God. Are we for or against God? When a person performs a mitzvah, she is united with God. If she commits a sin, she cuts herself off from God, rebels against God, and denigrates God's name. Deciding whether to perform a commandment or commit a sin constitutes the foundation of our lives. Well, when one performs a commandment, he does more than identify with just one instance of the expression of the divine will. Rather, he unites with the divine being. And if a sin is committed, a person not only transgresses against one clause or another of the Shulchan Aruch, he is disloyal to the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Therefore, the choice between commandment and sin is as stark a decision as whether or not to give one's life in order to sanctify God's name. Right, so this is the key. I think I'm just saying, it's a little thing I said I wouldn't do, but I'm going to do it, or I said I'd do this, but I'll put it off till tomorrow. It's just as stark, right? Each of those little decisions. Thousands of years of Jewish history and thousands of terrible trials have taught us that when a Jew is faced with this existential question, are you for or against God? Do you desire to cleave to God, or are you prepared to be severed from Him? She answers clearly that she will choose God, no matter what the cost. The Jew will not allow anything to remove her from God, even if she will be killed as a result. Her decision is not subject to discussion, nor is it amenable to reconsideration. In these chapters, 25, the author adds that a Jew is confronted with this fundamental choice in full force, not only in extreme life and death situations, accept idolatry or die, but also when the alternatives are seemingly inconsequential and less clear-cut. For instance, when faced with the dilemma of whether to perform a minor positive commandment or forgo it to gain some health benefit, or when faced with the temptation to engage in some lesser sin, promising that one will afterwards repent. The author concludes that in all such choices, the question at hand is essentially the same. The struggle is always whether or not one will sanctify the name of God, and when a person is aware of this, her decision will always be the same. She's prepared to live in a self-sacrificing way to sanctify God's name, and not just willing to die for this end. Sounds like what we were still learning? Yeah? He just puts it so beautifully. דהיינו, כשיעשה רצונו יתברך בעבודה זו, יתגלה בו פנימית רצון העליון בבחינת פנים וגילוי רב ולא בהסתר כלל.
For by.
But I think it's my turn, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Where, is it in the upper spheres?
No, for by.
Bottom of 344.
For by fulfilling.
Oh, okay. For by fulfilling God's will through this service, despite the exertion involved, the innermost divine will be revealed in it, internally as opposed to surrounding it, hovering over it from above, and very manifestly without any obscurity whatsoever.
So if you remember in chapter 23, as he points out, we learned that the world has a clouding, a hiding of the divine inner will, of the pnimius of God. But when you do a mitzvah, that's completely out of the way. Now God's inner will is completely revealed. And where God's will is completely revealed, there's unity entirely with the Ein Sof, and not just in a surrounding fashion, like it is with the little bit that gets through the world, the tiny bit, but actually in an eternal fashion. So the light that can't even make it into the highest spiritual worlds, we're absorbing it internally when we do a mitzvah, right? We learn this. וכשאין שום הסתר פנים ברצון העליון, אזי אין דבר נפרד כלל וכלל להיות יש ודבר בפני עצמו.
Now, when there is no concealment of the countenance of the divine will, nothing is at all separate from God, God's likeness, having an independent and separate identity of its own.
Right, so all these unities we learned about, that's what's happening. If God's will and essence is revealed internally within me, that means, yeah, I'm still a physical body here in time and space, and half of me is still in that reality, But another piece of me, a higher point of my soul, is completely united with God and has no independent identity of its own. It's got this complete union with the Ein Sof. Right? So when we're doing a mitzvah, we stand in two worlds. One, our physical being, which is still in time and space, but then a higher aspect of our soul, which has this timeless union. And we have ways, kind of inner knowing ways, of letting that seep into even our conscious physicality as we do it more and more. ולזאת תהיינה נפשו אלוקית וחיונית ולבושיהן כולן מיוחדות בתכלית הייחוד ברצון עליון ואור אינסוף ברוך הוא כנזכר לאל.
Thus his soul, example, the soul of the person performing the mitzvah, both the divine and the animating souls of their garments, of thought, speech, and action, will be united in perfect unity with the divine will and with the infinite light of God, blessed be he, as explained above.
Right? So, yeah, my animal soul would have had pleasure from another 20 minutes of sleep or whatever, but have this clear in my mind that when I get up and I come to a class, or I learn, or I do a mitzvah, this is what's happening. Even my animal soul and even its garments are united with the divine soul, which is united with the Ein Sof in this timeless union. And it's something, it's beyond any satisfaction or joy or productive activity I can do in the physical world normally. It's like it's just a cut through all these spiritual worlds for unity with the Ein Sof. And if,
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah,
So does that explain, are we actually taming our animal soul and using that energy more towards our godly work by doing that?
yeah, in that moment we are.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that I'm a tzaddik, right?
No, no. I
Next
get
moment
that.
is going to be the next struggle.
Right.
Right, so
But
the animal
there is a
soul-
way that we can kind of tame it and use that energy for godly things instead of,
Yeah, but even if I don't, even if I never tame my animal soul, and I just happen to win that one fight, right? And it's not changed at all.
right?
It's tremendous benefit for my animal soul and its garments to be bound up for that timeless reality with the divine soul, right? So yeah, it will help tame, but the benefit is there whether it does or not. That's the avoida question, and the self-change, that's a different question. And this path, it's a nice question, right? Because the long short path dealt very much with taming the animal soul, with really meditating and creating emotions and eventually getting my insides to match my outsides. This is more just like, it's called iskafia. It's really just stopping the animal soul with a powerful hidden love. It's not necessarily changing the animal soul. That's not what this technique is about.
So, failure to do even the smallest mitzvah is comparable to idolatry. Is that what he's saying?
Well, committing the smallest avera is comparable to idolatry. And in some senses, yes, even in a subtle way, when I haven't done a mitzvah, but it's not...
It still separates, either way. Is that what you-
Certainly the smallest avera, as you're saying, is absolutely separate. Yeah? And not doing the smallest mitzvah is missing out on a chance to have a unity that lasts eternally. Right? So it's more that. I mean, he does get to neglecting Torah study, which is seen as a sin itself, but that's... Remember that this book is written not for people who are struggling between, doing the wrong thing and doing the right thing. This is written more for people that are basically doing, the Jewish thing all the time, but maybe they're doing it without heart, or they're doing it in a way that frustrates them, or in some subtle ways they could be doing it better, right? So he's writing for people that are at a very high level, and I'm reading this book as someone who, I take a certain portion of my life and I try and elevate this, and then I try and elevate this. ולזאת תהיינה נפשו אלוקית וחיונית ולבושיהן כולן מיוחדות בתכלית הייחוד ברצון עליון ואור אינסוף ברוך הוא כנזכר לאל.
Okay, thus, right?
No,
Sure.
Thus.
no.
No?
No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thus his soul, that is the soul of the person performing the mitzvah, both the divine and animating
We
souls.
already read this part.
Oh, we did.
We
Okay,
did?
good.
Yes, we saw.
Well, then let's add some. I have another quote from Steinsaltz here. We're getting back to him.
See?
So you were right. No, very good. I'm glad one of us is paying attention. This is the unification of the divine and enlivening souls, which gives humanity the power to act in this world with their garments, which are of the body, thought, speech, and deed. At that moment, there is no concealment of God's countenance to mask the divine will. The crooked is made straight, concealments disappear, and humanity's spiritual and physical existence becomes transparent to our inner being. In that moment, a complete union is forged between man and God. It's very poetic. Yeah, but that is the lens through which we can see all the Jewish things we do, and they become richer and richer, and then it's much easier to overcome any obstacle. Much easier to be high functioning. וייחוד זה למעלה הוא נצחי לעולם ועד כי הוא יתברך ברצונו למעלה מהזמן. Go ahead, Cindy.
In the upper spheres, the union between the soul and God is eternal. For God, blessed be He, and His will transcend time. And thus, the union with God and His will also transcends time and is eternal.
Yeah, as we said. So I could enjoy, 2 minutes of some activity that is self-serving, or I could have a timeless, eternal bond with the Ein Sof and all my garments elevated. So if I'm looking at it rationally, which one should I pick?
So too, even in this world, his revealed will, as expressed in his word, the Torah, is also eternal.
And we see, mystically, the Torah is seen as that. I know some Reform circles see the Torah as a historical document that was put together through history by different authors, etc. But Kabbalah has always seen the Torah as God's Chokhmah. And as God's Chokhmah, scrolls exist within time, and they're written in a certain time, and they last a certain time, and then they're buried in a certain time, and they live in time physically. But the Torah, that is so much above the creation of time. That's Chokhmah of Atzilus, or Chokhmah of the Ein Sof. So it has nothing to do with time. One tiny spark of Chokhmah, that creates all the time in the universe. So the Torah is seen as being above time, and that means both, something that we only discovered in 1995 halakhically was there as part of the kernel of truth that we received on Sinai. It also means something that applied during the temple period, which we can't do now. The truth of it still applies, even though the circumstances are there. But it means something even more than that, that it's not just a question of saying, well, these laws will always apply in every situation. It means that these laws exist above time. This is like we often say, if an author had an idea of why write a book, that idea for the book preceded the book, and the book grows out of it. So if the Torah was what God looked into to create the universe, that means the Torah comes first, and time and space and everything else follows afterwards. And every part of it flows out of Torah, and it's true for all of it. So it's not just a legal claim that this will always be accurate. It's a very spiritual statement.
So God lets us have time as a discipline to let us get along with each other.
So the comment was, so God lets us have time as a discipline to get along with each other. Yeah, the whole thing is an exercise in saying, here's my model of truth. Now I'm going to emanate some souls into this exercise called time and space. They're going to have, the didactic experience of having free will. And now let's see how many times they choose good, how many times they choose bad, right? So exactly, time is needed for us to have our experience of learning, because otherwise there's no change. All time is the perception of change. If there's no change, there's no learning, there's no growth, and then there's no life, right? וכמו שכתוב, ודבר אלוקינו יקום לעולם, ודבריו חיים וקיימים כולו, ולא יחליף ולא ימיר דתו לעולמים כולו.
As it is written, but the word of our God shall stand forever, and his words live and endure eternally, and he will never alter or exchange his law.
There's a beautiful proof text there that he brings in. אלה שלמטה הוא תחת הזמן. ובאותה שעה לבדה שעוסק בו בתורה או במצווה. Go ahead, here below.
Here below, however, this union is within the limits of time. For in this world, the soul is under the dominion of time, and the soul is united with God only while it is engaged in Torah study or in the performance of a mitzvah.
Right, so why is it, if I have this eternal connection with God and all my soul is wrapped up in it, why am I not just chained for the rest of my life? Why do I go back to, making my self-centered decisions? Because my consciousness is in time, right? A big part of everything I experience, it's all in time. So yeah, I do have this connection, and my soul reaches up and has this oneness and brings everything else with it. But 10 minutes later, I'm on the highway, or I'm on the phone, or I'm at the fry pan at the kitchen, and I'm just doing normal stuff. And at that point, I can, if I keep that connection, that consciousness, that this is what life is about, and now I'm driving to do something productive, or I'm making food so that I can continue to be productive, etc., then, okay, I don't sense the interconnection, but it's still there. Now, if I go one step further and I say, well, I'm gonna, do something for myself because I like doing this. I'm gonna, I'm not gonna do something just to help the world. I'm gonna do something, just because I like the taste or I like the feeling. Now I actually have the potential to consciously cut off that connection I formed, and I have to kind of come back and reconnect it, even in a subtle way. But ultimately, although the connection is timeless, our consciousness is in time and space. And so we have the potential of constantly kind of dropping back down and forgetting about it, or even cutting it off.
Can we describe the soul in any way that us mortals can understand it? Is it a group of thoughts? Is it a spirit? What is it?
So the question is, can we describe the soul? I don't know if we did as much in this class. There's Intro to Kabbalah that we have online that goes through the structure of the soul in a lot of detail. And you may want to, or anyone who's wondering, may want to look at that to review even, where we look at the Jewish soul, which is considered a very complex being with 4 levels and with garments. And we also looked in earlier chapters that the soul has organs, which are the different commandments, and that those kind of interface with the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof, the light in the Ein Sof has a structure as well.
So these are thoughts?
No. Thought is one garment of the soul. Right? So we learned in chapter, was it 3? 2 or 3?
Is there any
That the soul has 10 faculties,
Sefirot.
which are the correspond to the sefirot, yeah. And then it has 3 garments, thought, speech, and action. And those garments are just like the clothing of the soul. So thought is just something that the soul behaves, the soul does and puts on and takes off. Intellect, the capacity to think, that's the identity and the eternal structure of the soul. Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, and also the emotional ones. Yeah, so we have a very clear and complex picture of what the soul is. It's a complex living being that stretches from now and here up to the Ein Sof itself.
Is the structure made up of what?
Made up of primarily 10 faculties: Chokhmah, Bina, Dat.
What's a faculty?
Faculty is a potential.
A potential.
Yeah. So you as a soul, you have the potential to have a feeling. Right? You're not having this feeling now, perhaps, but you have the potential to feel great fear, great awe. Right? So that potential to fear awe, that's called Gvura. Gvura is the faculty in your soul to be able to feel awe, whether it's just anger at someone because they insulted me, or whether it's awe at seeing, a beautiful natural scene, or whether it's awe of God. Right? So that is part of the structure of your soul. And then it can express as actual physical emotion or not, but it's always there. It's always the structure of the soul.
So I can't explain to my Gentile friend what a Jewish soul is in a minute.
If you, the easiest is if you've seen either the Intro to Kabbalah or Label Wolf's book. I don't know if you've read that. Practical Kabbalah. They both go through in some detail the structure of the soul.
So the answer is no, I can't describe the soul.
I thought the answer was yes. I thought I was giving you a yes. I'm sorry if it sounded like a no. Yeah, but it's a long topic because it's complex. So I don't want to go back and review, but Yeah, if you look at, I mean, I can show you after class some places in the office where you'll see the different information, and we went through it in detail in Intro to Kabbalah and also in like chapters 2 in this. But definitely, you can show, if you like a diagram of the soul, the components of the soul, the garments of the soul, the levels of the soul. It's all understood, even if it's not something we connect to every day, right?
I didn't know I was such a complex kid.
You
Yeah,
are.
you are very complex.
Or you could just say it's like a candle. No matter how you hold a candle, it wants to go back up.
That's nice. That's nice. Here below, is that where we are?
No. 4D.
כי אחר כך אם עוסק בדבר אחר, new glasses. מהייחוד העליון למטה, והיינו כשעוסק בדברים בטלים לגמרי, שאין בהם צורך כלל עבודת השם.
For he engages afterward in anything else, or if he engages afterwards in anything else, he becomes separated here below from his supernal union. That is, if he occupies himself with absolutely unnecessary matters that are in no way useful to the service of God.
So remember the conversation about klipa, about the shell of reality. So if I'm taking 20 minutes to watch an NPR blog about something to clear my mind so I can get back to doing productive things, okay, still there. But if I'm binge watching Sopranos for 3 hours, that's now my animal soul that's binge watching, and now, let's be honest, now I'm living for myself. So I'm no longer nullified before the Ein Sof, obviously. It's me watching The Sopranos. That wasn't why God sent me, as much as it's a great show, I'm sure. That's not why God sent me to the earth, right? And if I'm doing it just for myself, now I become separated from that union that the mitzvah and the Torah study accomplished.
So does that also include just the mundane things we do every day? I mean,
Depends how you do them, yeah.
how you do it, okay.
Yeah,
right.
so if I'm doing mundane things that are necessary to keep me going, give me energy,
And you
refresh
make them
me,
holy, and
then I'm elevating the mundane. If I'm engaging in the mundane for me, having a user-friendly relationship with the world, now I'm actually taking it and dropping it down and cutting myself off. I'm not sinning, I mean, so to speak. He's about to say you are sinning, but for us.
So,
But
so by washing my teeth, brushing my teeth is what?
I think you have to brush your teeth to stay healthy and have good teeth, and that's part of normal taking care of yourself. Then that's a Jew brushes their teeth, right? So that's it's part of life. It's good.
But in a way, watching The Sopranos helps you to interact with the everyday person around you, which is important.
Right. So it's your state of mind. If that's why you're doing it, if you're saying I want to watch this show so I can be a better person in society in some way, I can learn. Okay, now you're taking it, elevating it. So it depends on the person and the time. Most people who are binge watching are not doing that, I think. Just my judgment call there. I keep losing my spot. Yeah, nevertheless. ואף על פי כן, כשחוזר ושב לעבודת השם אחר כך, לתורה ולתפילה הוא מבקש מחילה מהשם על שהיה אפשר לא לעסוק אז בתורה ולא עסק השם יסלח לו.
Nevertheless, when he repents and resumes his service of God through Torah study or prayer, and he asks forgiveness of God for not having studied Torah at the time of his occupation in vain matters, when he could have done so, God forgives him.
Right, so like I said, this is written for people that spend the majority of their time like learning and doing Jewish stuff and working on themselves, and for them, taking a walk for 45 minutes instead of a quick 15-minute, clear my mind to get back to learning Torah, that's half an hour of Torah study down the drain, right? I mean, imagine what you could have accomplished. Mashiach could have come, right? So for them, this is really a serious thing, right? Wasting time learning Torah, it's something that they wanted to avoid, and they really judge themselves on not just how much time they spent, but how deeply did they delve, right? How much did they really apply their emotions and their intellect to their learning? So that kind of subtle failure of wasting some time and not accomplishing something as a soul, when we turn to God and we say, oops, sorry, God says, fine, it's good, you're back to connection, right? God's always 100% willing to reconnect, we just have to ask. So for them, It's really a process of, you're connected through Torah mitzvahs, and then maybe you have a deviation, but then you're like, oh, sorry, I messed up again. God's like, fine, here you are, you're right back, and you connect again. And that's always available to us. No matter how many times we may, allow our self-centered drive to run the show in a subtle way, I can always, through tshuva, reconnect right away afterwards. Avar al mitzvat aseh v'shav lo zaz misham ad she'mochalin lo.
As our sages have said, if one neglected to perform a positive precept and repented, he is pardoned forthwith.
I like to think this is, something to make his Hasidim feel a little better, that they're always beating themselves up about how can you avoid wasting time and not learning Torah as deeply as you should have. Of course, that no one can escape that, and that's it. It's no big deal. It's no big deal, but God will forgive you automatically the moment you turn back. So it's not something you need to stress about once it's gone.
Am I wasting time when I brush my teeth?
I don't think so. I think brushing teeth is keeps you from getting a toothache, and with a toothache you can't learn Torah. So that kind of thing, taking care of yourself, I think we can rest assured that's it's all part of this.
Right, and if you were breathing on me with bad breath, I would have put you over there.
There you go. Your learning partner wants you to have good breath.
Right.
I hope I have it.
You do.
You always do.
You got it.
Always do. Yeah.
You're there.
לזה תקנו ברכת סלח לנו 3 פעמים בכל יום, עוון ביטול תורה שאין אדם ניצול ממנו בכל יום.
For this reason, because such a request for forgiveness is immediately effective in reuniting the soul to God, so that it will not be parted from him even momentarily. The sages ordain that the blessing beginning, forgive us, in which we beg forgiveness for the sin of neglecting the study of the Torah, be recited as often as 3 times daily, since no one escapes this sin even a single day.
Yeah, so in the Amidah, the daily Amidah, there's a prayer, Slach Lanu, forgive us. What's this? You sin so many times, you can't just say it once a day or once a week and get it all done. God's always going to forgive everything 3 times a day. And he says it's for this. So you lived a productive life. You were a good Jew. You were maybe a Bainani. But let's be honest. Did you spend every possible moment delving into Torah as deeply as was your potential? Or did you sometimes just skim over the words or put the book down and, have a cup of tea or waste some time with chit-chat when you could have been learning? So these subtle deviations that really, really serious Hasidim would deal with, saying that's why we have this prayer for forgiveness, because you're never gonna be 100% of everything you could have been all the time. It's not possible, right?
Do we have this prayer in our Reformed liturgy?
It is in our liturgy. It's in the Amidah of the morning minyan. So the last time I checked, the paper that has the Amidah there, that's the daily Amidah. It does have Slach Lanu Avidu. It has that prayer, I believe. Yeah, it's not in our Shabbat Siddur, right? Our Shabbat Siddur has the Amidah not for the weekday.
What about the morning Shabbat service?
Also, yeah. So you don't say that prayer for forgiveness. You don't say it on Shabbat. On Shabbat, we stop asking for forgiveness and we do other productive things. We kind of elevate the whole week. So 3 times a day during the week.
How about if someone is studying Torah and their mind wanders off and they're thinking of
Oh yeah,
life and
pancakes or the weather or politics.
or what they're going to do when
Yeah.
they finish studying Torah?
Can you imagine such a sinner, right? So yeah, that too, right? So I'm learning Torah. My mind wanders. I didn't have full focus. And for those 2 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it was, I'm stuck on the page, or I was reading and not paying attention. You ever done that? And you got to go back 3 pages. So that kind of thing. Obviously, this is not a sin, right? It's not. There's no negative commandment, but it is. You're neglecting the ability. You're neglecting your full potential of fulfilling a positive commandment. So you've left some potential unfulfilled, and for that, we say, pardon us. God willing, each of us will have a day in our lives when that's the only thing we have to ask forgiveness for.
I have to ask God pardon for letting me take a shower and brush my teeth, but
Brush your
while
teeth
I
again.
wasn't reading the Torah,
What was the last word?
while I wasn't studying on the Torah.
Not, yeah. So like we said, it's not for regular maintenance. But if I take an hour and a half shower, with steam and with salt and with whatever and a bath, if I'm doing it just for myself, not because I need it to serve the world, then yeah, that was time I could have spent going out and feeding the hungry or learning something. So by this, yeah, we're not meant to just do things for our own luxury.
So I have to limit the time I spend in the shower.
If you got some, I'm not going to say yes to that. But that's exactly what he's saying. That's what he's saying. Yes.
Jack, you got this thing today about brushing your teeth.
That's right.
It's really,
We like you to be clean and smell good.
I try.
All right. So we got.
I just want to be on good terms with my God.
That's exactly it. We want to be on good terms with our God.
You got it.
Okay. For this reason, וכמו התמיד שהיה מכפר על מצוות עשה. This blessing, I forget where we are.
where we at?
Who knows?
I'll do it. This blessing is like the daily burnt offering that atoned for neglect of positive precepts. Right, so in the time of the temple, there was a daily burnt offering that was there just for the positive mitzvahs that the people of Israel could have done but didn't. We said, here's a sacrifice for that. It's not like we didn't murder anybody, right? We didn't, etc. But we could have been better. Go figure. And for that, God will always forgive us 3 times a day in our prayers. ואין זה איך ואשוב אלא אם כן שבשעת החטא ממש הוא סומך על התשובה ולכך חוטא כמו שנתבאר במקום אחר.
This is not the same as saying, I will sin and repent, unless at the very time when one commits the sin, he relies on subsequent repentance and sins because of it, as explained elsewhere.
And so we covered this earlier, but he's kind of clarifying again. It's not the same as saying, because tshuva is available, let me now go and take an hour and a half shower or binge watch Sopranos or whatever, because I'll do tshuva after, so it's fine. Let me enjoy it now, because I got the get out of jail free card in my pocket. If you really do that, now that's a different situation. But this is, I was trying to learn Torah and my mind wandered. I really, the day looked so good I couldn't help myself, and I walked for another half hour when I really was time for me to go back and learn more. So for that, we were always forgiven right away. And now we get to the last point of this section, and he really wraps it up with Moshe's speech at the last day of his life. When we're all standing, Moshe is talking to us, and we're about to enter the land of Israel, and Moshe says, along with the quote of this book, because this thing is very near to you in your heart and your mouth to do it, Moshe says, you're going to have to say the Shema every day, right? Twice a day or 3 times a day with the bedtime Shema, however you do it. The Jews in the desert actually weren't commanded to say the Shema. So believe it or not, the Jews in the desert, maybe some of them did, but this wasn't an ordained practice to say the Shema as part of their prayers twice a day or 3 times a day. And only when we stood at the last day of Moshe's life, about to enter the land of Israel, leaving the spiritual cocoon of the desert and entering into sort of the more mundane, real existence of the promised land, do we have to start saying the Shema. And so he's bringing out a point here of why that would be. Because the whole idea of the Shema, as we've learned, is to remind myself that I would give up my life, that I'd sacrifice my life for God. So that's the key. When we say the Shema here at Temple, you close your eyes, you bring yourself back to that core of your being that would give up my life to not be separated from God, and that engages all my other faculties and brings me to a different place. So you'd think it might have been, well, you're about to go conquer the land, you're going to have to wage wars, so you want to learn that you would sacrifice your life for God, because otherwise you're not going to have the courage to go into battle. And so we want to first put that to the side, because we're told God promises the Jewish people, I'll fight for you. Right? There's going to be miraculous battles. You're going to surround the walls of Jericho and they're going to fall. You're going to 10 people will chase 1,000 people. So they knew going in that God was going to do miracles. They'd seen miracles for the last, several decades throughout their time in the desert and the Exodus. And so clearly it wasn't to give them the courage to fight that Moshe said this, and specifically when they were leaving the desert. The reason was the exact same reason we have now. They were leaving the desert where it was all spiritual. It was very apparent. You had communion with God. You had Moshe right there, and they were all on a very high level. They were called the generation of Dat, a generation of connection to God. Going into Israel, it wasn't the battles that Moshe was worried about. It was the mundane life. It was the having to farm and having to spend time working and having to, now build houses and develop the land and deal with making a government and deal with sewage systems and whatever else they had to do. It was a lot of mundane work, and now they were going to be faced with mundane reality, and they needed to say the Shema every day to remind themselves to overcome their evil inclinations and not get caught up in it, not get lost in it, and be able to keep their connection to God. And that's why they were commanded then, and that's what we're using the Shema for now, is to keep that connection with us when we're faced with the struggles of everyday life.
Well, when they were in the desert too, God was actually supposedly in the cloud that led them, so he was
Yeah, so here I am, I don't see God. When they're in the desert, they look up and there's a pillar of fire at night and a pillar of cloud in the day, so not so hard to have a connection with the eternal when it's manifesting like that.
Doesn't it say somewhere also that they didn't want to give up that light, or they were just with God and setting all the time? They were a little apprehensive about going in.
Yeah, there was a lot of the reasons why the spies and all the midrash around that is that they were holy people and they didn't really want to have to deal with the mundane realities of life. וזה יבן למה ציווה משה רבנו עליו השלום במשנה תורה לדור שנכנסו לארץ לקראת קריאת שמע פעמיים בכל יום לקבל עליו מלכות שמיים במסירת נפש.
In light of the above, it will be understood why Moshe Rabbeinu, peace be upon him, commanded in the book of Deuteronomy, not in the earlier books of the Torah addressed to the generation of Jews who wander in the desert, but to the generation that entered the Holy Land, that they, too, and not only the subsequent generations, recite the Shema twice daily. The intention in the Shema being to acknowledge the kingdom of heaven with self-sacrifice, i.e., the Shema teaches us to accept martyrdom for the sanctification of God's name.
Right. So the idea of the Shema is to accept Malchut Shemaim, the sovereignty of the heavens, with self-sacrifice. Right. So it wasn't so much to actually physically sacrifice their lives, because God was going to fight for them. It was exactly the same challenge we're examining now. Right, that I want to say the sovereignty of heaven would want me to be a good person now and want me to love another Jew. And if I'm feeling a grudge here and I want to kind of go off in my own direction and get back at some other Jew, okay, I would sacrifice my life to not be separated from God. And so can I not give up, spreading that gossip or giving that jab back and just love another Jew even if my animal soul is being frustrated? Or whatever the situation is. והלא הבטיח להם פחדכם ומוראכם ייתן השם וגומר.
Now one may ask, why was it necessary for our forefathers to prepare themselves for martyrdom? Had they not been promised that God will lay the fear and dread of you upon all the inhabitants of the land?
As we said, אלא משום שקיום התורה ומצוותיה תלוי בזה שיזכור תמיד עניין מסירת נפשו לשם על ייחודו שיהיה קבוע בליבו תמיד ממש יומם ולילה לא ימיש מזיכרונו.
But because the fulfillment of the Torah and its commandments is contingent on one's being constantly aware of his readiness to surrender his life to God for the sake of his unity, that is, that a person remember that he would be willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of God's unity if the situation would warrant it, which is the message contained in the Shema. He must therefore recite it twice daily, morning and evening, so that this awareness will be fixed permanently in his heart and will not depart from his memory night and day.
So this is the theme of the book: to be a Beinoni, to fulfill Torah's commandments all the time. Yeah. Also the ones about speech, also the ones about not getting angry, also the ones about loving another Jew. Right? Fulfill them all the time. To do that, we need to have the Shema to remind us that we would sacrifice our lives, and that we accept all this whole pathway, this whole Jewish model with self-sacrifice. So of course, I would give up some little pleasure, or I would endure some little frustration to make sure that I get my personal work done here as a Jew.
I know what this is. When you say the Shema 3 times a day, 2 times a day, is it the entire Shema, or is it just the one?
It's the entire.
It's the entire Shema.
Yeah, you say the traditional practice say Shema, Baruch Shem, and then the V'havta, and the part about
So you say the V'havta also.
the tzitzit, and the part about entering the lands, or in the
Okay,
different
so
order.
it's all 3 parts.
Yeah, so it's huge like that. It's
Yeah,
that much
okay.
text.
All right, okay.
But halakhically, if you say the section that we say at temple, that actually counts as the Shema. So although the complete version involves more, the minimum is met by the part that we know and say.
Okay.
So you shouldn't feel like you're not doing your thing. כי בזה יוכל לעמוד נגד יצרו לנצחו תמיד בכל עת ובכל שעה.
In this way, one is able to withstand his evil inclination and to vanquish it at every time and every moment.
Boom, right?
Even after Moshe's passing, whenever Jews are engaged in intense struggle with the evil inclination, as it is written, God said to Moshe, "Behold, you are about to sleep with your fathers, and this people will rise up and stay."
Kanis straight. Kanis Karla is explained above, right? So Moshe said it. He said, "God told me, when I'm gone, you're gonna not be at your best. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's why you have to recite the Shema 3 times a day." And this whole second technique is based on that. That the whole idea of the Shema is accepting all this, all the beautiful things that we teach at Temple Israel, with self-sacrifice. And so if I'd sacrifice my life, now here I am ready to just give up 10 minutes of whatever. So that gets us to the end of the short long path. Next week we're going to start the next section, which is about joy.
All right.
Joy. Yeah, because for us, being joyful is not just as we'll see, it's not a goal in life, as in the pursuit of happiness, which is the American ideal. Happiness is its own reality. You should just pursue it. For us, joy is actually a commandment. We're commanded to serve God with joy, and joy is there actually only because it elevates your ability to do things more effectively. We know if we do something happily, we're going to do it more effectively, more fully, more emotionally, more present. So joy is seen as an obligation, and the next several chapters, until 34, I think, are giving us profound techniques that I think you'll be amazed at, of how to avoid the opposite of joy, how to enhance joy, and we're going to be really, really thrilled to put these things into practice. Yeshikoch.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what do you think? Should we have skipped it all?
Skip one?
Should we have skip this section?